a Spanish soldier wrote in his diary. I did not know what to say. I stood there looking at things never heard of, never seen, never dreamed of before. He was standing in the middle of a lake, in the middle of Mexico, looking at a city built on water, with towers and temples rising above the lake surface, causeways connecting it to the shore, canoes moving silently between the buildings like gondolas in a dream. 200,000 people. Bigger than London. Bigger than Paris. Bigger than any city in Europe at that moment. And within 2 years, it was gone. This is Forgotten Kingdoms, and this is the story of the Aztec Empire. The civilization that built the most extraordinary city on Earth, and lost it not because Spain was stronger, but because the universe sent them a god at exactly the wrong moment. The Aztecs called themselves the Mexica, and they should not have been there. When they arrived in the Valley of Mexico in the 13th century, every single piece of good land was already taken. Every fertile valley, every defensible hilltop, every freshwater source, taken by people who were already there and had no intention of sharing. So the Mexica were pushed to the one place nobody else wanted, a swampy island in the middle of Lake Texcoco. Useless land, uninhabitable land, land nobody fought over because nobody wanted it. And the Mexica looked at it and saw something nobody else did. A fortress, surrounded by water on every side, impossible to attack without boats. In 1325, they founded Tenochtitlan on that swampy island. Within 200 years, they had turned it into the greatest city in the Americas. They drained the swamps, built artificial islands called chinampas, floating gardens that produced more food per acre than almost any agricultural system in the ancient world. They built 3 massive causeways connecting the island to the shore, each wide enough for 10 men to walk side by side. They built an aqueduct system that brought fresh water from the mainland. They built a zoo, an aviary, botanical gardens in 1500 CE. Tenochtitlan had running water, sewage systems, and a zoo, when most European cities were still dumping waste into their streets. At its peak, the Aztec Empire controlled 5 million people across central Mexico. But here is what your history class never told you about the Aztecs. They didn't conquer for land. They conquered for people. The Aztec religious system required a constant supply of human sacrifice. Not because they were bloodthirsty savages, but because they genuinely believed that without human blood, the sun would stop rising. Every morning the sun rose. It was because the Aztec priests had fed it. Every harvest, every rain, every breath of every living person, paid for in blood. It sounds horrifying to modern ears, but to the Aztecs, the priests performing these rituals were the most heroic people in their civilization. They were literally keeping the world alive. This belief system was also the Aztecs' greatest military weakness, because they didn't kill their enemies in battle. They captured them for sacrifice, which meant their military tactics prioritized taking prisoners over killing efficiently. Against Spanish soldiers who had no interest in being captured, and no interest in being anything other than as lethal as possible. It was catastrophic. Hernán Cortés arrived on the coast of Mexico in 1519 with 500 soldiers. The Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II received reports of these strange visitors, men in metal armor, riding animals nobody had ever seen, carrying weapons that made thunder. And Moctezuma did something that still divides historians today. He invited them in. Some historians believe he thought Cortés was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, who Aztec prophecy said would return from the east in a one-reed year. 1519 was a one-reed year. Cortez arrived from the east. Whether Moctezuma truly believed this or was simply playing for time, nobody knows. What we know is that Cortez walked into Tenochtitlan as a guest, was given a palace to stay in, was shown the city's treasures, and then, in a move of stunning audacity, arrested the emperor inside his own palace, using the emperor himself as a hostage to control the empire. It worked for a while, until it didn't. The Aztec people rose up, drove the Spanish out of the city in a night of chaos and slaughter. The Spanish called it La Noche Triste, the Night of Tears. Cortez lost half his men in a single night. He retreated. He should have been finished. But smallpox had arrived in Tenochtitlan before he left, and by the time Cortez regrouped and returned with a larger force, and dozens of enemy tribes who hated the Aztecs, the city that had 200,000 people was being killed by disease faster than it could defend itself. In 1521, after a siege of 75 days, Tenochtitlan fell. The Spanish tore it down, stone by stone, and built Mexico City on top of it. The foundations of the Aztec Empire are still there, directly beneath the streets of one of the largest cities on Earth. Here is what I want you to carry with you. The Aztecs built a floating city that made Spanish soldiers stop in their tracks and question whether they were dreaming. They developed agricultural systems that fed millions in a landscape that should have been uninhabitable. They built a civilization of extraordinary complexity, art, and astronomy. And they were destroyed by three things working simultaneously. A disease that arrived before their enemy did. An enemy that understood their military weakness and exploited it completely. And a prophecy that made the most powerful emperor in the Americas hesitate at exactly the moment he should have acted. Tenochtitlan is gone, but Mexico City stands on its bones. And every time someone excavates a new subway line or digs a new foundation in downtown Mexico City, they find it still there, waiting to be remembered. This is Forgotten Kingdoms. Subscribe, because next week, the kingdom that conquered Egypt, ruled as pharaohs, built more pyramids than Egypt itself, and got completely erased from history by the people they once ruled. The Kingdom of Kush. I'll see you there.